Hi, welcome. And today we are going to feature my dad's 1965 Chrysler 300L. And we're going to go over this, do a little history on the letter car series and the 300s. And I'm going to tell you, I think this is the best built Chrysler car ever. Like, I've owned a lot of Mopars over the years, and the 1965 was the first year for the C-body platform. The 60 to 64s were unique. They were the first unitized Mopars that they made, the full-size cars. They had a front stub frame, but the rest of it was unibody. And this is kind of the evolution off that in the C-body, which they built from basically 65 all the way to the end in 78 with the New Yorkers. But these are just very well styled cars. They're built solid. There's no cheap plastic in them. They drive fantastic. They're just great cars. But let me give you a little tour of the car, and then I'll show you some of the interesting bits on this, and then we'll go into a little history lesson on the 300 cars. So I think one of the coolest parts about this is the covered headlights. I don't know why I like these. I just think they look really good. So they actually had glass headlights on these, and they do crack. They do get rock chips because they are glass, but I think they look really cool. The styling is very classic. It's Elwood Engel took over from Virgil Exner when he basically got forced out after the disastrous 62 models. And he really liked, they call these slab-sided C-bodies. The 67 and 68s are even more extreme examples of this. This has a little more character. So it has kind of a body line. It's kind of a scoop side with the trim top and bottom. But I really like the L's. Like the New Yorkers these years, they just kind of slapped. It was still kind of the 50s attitude where it's like the higher the model, the more trim. And on the L's, they kind of had a more minimalist aesthetic to them. So left side trim. They were the sporty model. It just added weight and wasn't really necessary. The 300L was the top of the line in 65. Well, I guess it was the sporty model in 65. The New Yorker was technically more luxurious, but yeah, my dad's had this one for a couple years. We've had it in and out of the shop a couple times, and it was just time to do some work to it. It needs the AC charged. The power window switch on the driver isn't working very well. They're working on the individual buttons, but the driver switch has always been a little funky on this. We got to do it. He wanted the AC charged, which we tried to do yesterday, but the evaporator valve feels like it's bad, so I have to order one of those. Probably my favorite feature on the L is they actually have the front L is lit, which is kind of anticlimactic because it's not lit right now, so the bulb must be out, which is really annoying. So I wanted to show you guys that. Let me see, does it work on the park? Hold on, I might have to have the key on. Hold on here. Come on, key. I can't remember how that works. Yeah, so you have to have the ignition on, so it doesn't work unless the ignition's on. So there we go, lit up L. You know, in the early 300 models, they had like the letter kind of everywhere. They didn't do it as much on this one. Here, I'm just gonna turn the key off so we don't kill the battery here. But they had it on the console, which is another thing we're gonna fix here. The glove box lock kind of disintegrated, and I got a new one. We just gotta put it in. They have the grill one, and then there's one on the back here, and that's actually the gas filler back here. So they hid it behind there, which is kind of neat. I'm kind of a Washington State plate nerd, so the MBB actually means Skagit County. So, and that's a Wash 63 plate, which they used from 63 to basically, they came out with the new ones in 68, but some counties ran out. So like King County, Snohomish County, the bigger counties in Washington. So they changed it, and it says Washington instead of Wash. People didn't like the Wash. People thought it was abbreviated, and people didn't like it back in the day. It's only lasted a couple years, but interior is really nice on this. You know, it's kind of a blue with a white interior. All the 300s came with buckets and a console. They have just super cool dash, but as I said, everything's made out of metal on this. You know, it's got the chrome interior trim, and you know, the chrome mirror. Like 68, they passed a law where everything had to be non-reflective on the interior and the exterior. So they kind of cheapened out everything. This still had the chrome. It has the performance gauge, and you know, the 300s were really cool cars. You know, they started out with the 55, and then every year after that was a different letter. So the 55 was the C300, 56 was the B, 57 was the C, all the way up. And from basically 55 to 61, they were very unique cars. You know, they were very special. You know, they had the biggest engine, the most luxury, leather. And then, as what happens with all high-end models, in 62, they decided that they were gonna take advantage of the 300 name. And basically they put a 300 on pretty much any 62 Chrysler. There was still the 300H, which was, you know, the leather, it was the big motor, but you could get a 300 that wasn't like the top of the line then. And they kind of continued that. So 63 was the 300J, which you got the cross ram motor. And that had all the leather and everything. So they kind of did that, but that was the least amount of 300s they made. I think they only made 400 of them. So 64, they went back to the cheapening of the car. So 63, all had 15-inch wheels, all had leather interior, all had the cross ram motor. In 64, you got the standard 413 with a 4-barrel. You could still get the cross ram, you could still get the leather interior, but you got the 14-inch wheels instead of 15s. They got rid of the tack in the console for performance gauge. As you can see on this has the performance gauge just like that. Although a little trivia, on a 4-speed L, which they made a few of them, you still got the tack, not the performance gauge. Also, this is a neat little 300 thing. So all the 300s had this. It's like a thick rubber mat with like some metal on it for traction. And those were just on the letter cars. And they kept that all the way through 65. I think that's a nice little touch. This did not have it when we got them. So we actually had our upholstery guy sew those back in for my dad, which looks really good on here. So this is on 64, they kind of decontented them, and then L was the last year. You know, the full-size muscle car was like kind of a thing, and it was pretty cool. So yeah, back to where we were. So 64, they kind of cheapened them up, and then the L was, you know, there really wasn't like a top-end motor for an L. You know, everybody says like, oh, they made dual quads on this. Never from the factory. They did sell over-the-counter ones, but all the L's were 413 4-barrels from the factory. You could get a 4-speed still, which is a pretty neat car. They're pretty rare. They only made a few of them, but they're pretty cool. And you can get a convertible or hardtop. But they were, again, very decontented from the 63, 62s, the earlier ones. So these all have 14-inch wheels, you know, with a pretty simple 300 hubcap. It doesn't say L on it. You know, some of the early ones actually had the letter car on them. And, you know, they got rid of the leather interior, so still bucket seats, but they're vinyl. So they just kind of cheapened them up a little bit. You know, people weren't willing to spend for the full-size performance anymore. You know, the Max Wedge cars came out, you know, 409 Impalas, like everybody, the GTO came out in 64. It kind of changed the whole dynamic, and the whole baby boomer generation was getting old enough, you know, to be able to buy their own cars. So the full-size luxury stuff was just kind of on the outs at that point. You know, something else kind of cool back here is they kind of have a, call a scalloped, you know, rear seat. That was a 300 thing, which is kind of a neat option there. So, but yeah, these are really neat cars and they drive really nice. All right, so looks like it's gonna start raining here in a minute, so I'm gonna wrap this up pretty quick, but I just wanted to show you a video of it starting so you can hear it, listen to it run. And I'll open the hood and show you under the hood. Another kind of neat thing on these, you can't see it because it's warm, but there's no temperature gauge on these. There's just alternator and gasoline. That's it. So they have idiot light for the oil over here, and they actually have a cold and hot right here. That's all they had. I really wish they wouldn't have done that. Chrysler could have spent a little more money to do that. That's like the one big hit on this car where it's just like, have a temp gauge. Like really, like there's even room for it right here. Kind of wonder if like maybe they were thinking of doing that at some point, but they didn't. It's just kind of annoying. Chrysler's through the mid 60s didn't have temp gauges. Also has a trip odometer, which is, I don't know, that's a thing I like to use, be able to keep track of fuel mileage. It's an factory AC car, which we're working on getting fixed. And then it's got an AM FM in it too. I can't remember if that was factory or not. My dad might have added that, but it's always a nice option to have. And then a reverse speaker fader, and a map light, and then a clock right here. But let me show you the engine bay. release is way over here. Here's the engine. It's pretty standard Chrysler. It's just a big block 413 with a 4-barrel. It's got electronic ignition on it. This little bracket that we make that hides the ECU back there, keeps it out of the way. And then it's got the small unsilenced air cleaner, which is kind of neat. And then factory AC system. So, all right. Well, it's gonna start raining here, so I'm gonna drive this back. So I'll do a quick driving video for all you guys. Enjoy the fall foliage because it's supposed to start pouring tonight with a bunch of wind. So this is probably the last time you're gonna see these trees with leaves on them. They're all gonna be empty by tomorrow night. And then you can see the wiring for the power windows there. That's how Chrysler did it. 2 big plugs through there. Power windows, so pretty option car. None of that was standard on these. Power windows was not standard. You could order an L pretty stripped down and pretty cheap. Sounds pretty good and goes pretty good. Nice long hood. There's just no squeaks and rattles on these cars. Like they were made really, really nice. Like, again, as I said at the start, like these were some of the best built cars Chrysler ever made. By the late 60s, they started making, plastic A-pillar panels and dash panels, and these cars are just all metal, screwed together very, very well. Kind of the peak of Chrysler quality. They were really classic cars, so. All right, I'm back in my driveway. Ignore the skid marks, don't worry about those. And this is a nice tour of my dad's 1965 Chrysler 300L. Hope you enjoyed the video. We'll talk to you guys soon.